voice now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm discussing the signs of a narcissist, how to identify if you have narcissist in your life. You know, more often than not, we might even be best friends with a narcissist and not even know it. However, we might not always feel great about being around them. We may feel like we have to give them a lot of attention. We may even feel controlled by them. And it's not until we realize what we're dealing with can we begin to understand and combat it. You know, I find that a lot of people don't even realize that some of their friends are narcissists. They just feel a certain way around them. They might feel just overwhelmed or even burdened. And sometimes they can get emotional because they don't know how to deal with their feelings and they don't know where it's coming from. We can't solve a problem until we actually know what's happening. We can't come up with a successful solution unless we know what we're actually dealing with. And so on today's show, I'm going to point out 15 signs that your friend, best friend, might be a narcissist. The first thing that I want to talk about in today's show is that when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with someone that wants a lot of attention. You're dealing with someone that wants undivided attention constantly. And they want the undivided attention, but they're not willing to give that back because only one person can be center stage. Only one person can be center stage. Only one person can hold court. And so when that's the case, remember, you're always going to play second fiddle when you're dealing with these people because they don't know how to share the limelight. They don't know how to share that type of space because they've never done it. And so I want you to think about that. If you have a friend right now that you're dealing with, that it seems like they always have all the attention, you're constantly praising them, giving them attention, and that's the only way that they really respond, then you may be dealing with a narcissist. You know, another indication that you might be dealing with a narcissist is they have a tendency of wanting you for themselves. They have a tendency of wanting you for themselves. They want to basically sequester you. And by sequestering you, what happens here is that you become their best friend. You become their end-all, be-all to them. And so they might have multiple versions of you, and they're able to spend time with you. And what happens here is they're also getting their supply. So you're giving them the undivided attention. You're listening to them on bated breath. They're able to have that communication with you. And the interesting part about the whole situation is that you don't really realize what's happening. Okay? Because when it's one-on-one, the narcissist kind of gives you that attention that you want. The narcissist actually kind of gives you attention, a lot of times puts you on a pedestal, makes you feel really, really good inside. And that's really interesting because when we're coming from the position of not getting a lot of attention or wanting to have a good friend, the attention that the narcissist gives to you, especially one-on-one, can be extremely intoxicating. It can be extremely intoxicating, and it can go to your head very quickly, and it's almost like a drug. You want more and more of it. And so when they're able to get you on your own, they're able to give you that attention. And what's interesting, though, is on the back end is when you're spending a lot of time with a narcissist, the attention is really great, but it's kind of empty. And there's a large addiction to it. So once you get addicted to this attention, it's almost like it's a drug. And so when you're not getting that attention and you're not seeing that narcissist and the narcissist isn't communicating with you, it can be very disappointing. It can be quite overwhelming, and it can make you question a lot of things. And so if this is going on right now and you're feeling this energy, you might want to double check and literally think about, really honestly, by doing an inventory, is your friend a narcissist? Is this what you're dealing with? You know, a lot of times, too, the narcissists find faults in other people, okay? So they may find faults in your other friends, right? Maybe even your spouse, your significant other. And they'll normally find those faults in people that you are spending time with outside of them. They're going to find faults in that because they're going to make you double question the people that you spend time with. And usually what happens is because they present that in such a way for you to question that, you're going to start questioning the validity of those friendships. You're going to start questioning that entire interaction. And what will happen is usually more often than not, they will convince you to some degree that you should stop spending so much time with that person and instead spend time with them. And so what they're doing is they're getting the supply that they need, and they're having you cut yourself off from certain contacts because of what they say, because of their word. And so in essence, that is full on control. And I've had it where, I've been in relationships before with narcissists which would comment on even your family members about how maybe your family member isn't doing this, or they're not up to par, or they're not this or that. I've had clients recently that have been in my office that have a good friend who they don't realize is a narcissist that picks on their significant other, talking about how they're no good, or they're not responsible, or they're not this, or they're not that, making that person question their significant other in a way where it starts to put a rift between them and their marriage. And so these are very interesting situations that do happen and do take place. And if you are not aware of the situation, and you're not aware of the symptoms, you might not know what you're dealing with, because it's presented in a way of caring. I care about you so much that I want to make sure that this person doesn't hurt you. I care about you so much that I want you to be with the highest quality caliber of people, and I don't think that that person is the highest caliber quality of people. Do you see what I'm saying? And so when we directly relate this to the narcissist, we can understand what we are honestly dealing with. Another facet of the narcissist is that they have a tendency of being extreme in their words. Very extreme, very black and white speaking. There's not a lot of gray. It's very black and white. And what happens with this is that they can be very brutal, and they can also be extremely nice. They can shower you with love, or they can get you to question yourself at the core. And it's interesting because their words can be so almost like love bombing to completely devastating, that unless you are aware of what you're dealing with, it can really get to your core. I found that a lot of people who have a tendency of having codependent tendencies, who were raised in a family dynamic where it was very codependent in nature, perhaps mom or dad was dealing with a situation, maybe even a personality disorder that you didn't understand, obviously, growing up. And so you were trying to cater to that parent, to get them to love you, to get them to care about you, to get them to be there for you. And so you jumped through multiple hoops. And in the process of doing that, you wanted them to like you. You wanted to get their attention. You wanted to make them happy. That's the whole concept of codependency. And so when we have that in the relationship, and we bring that throughout our childhood and into our adulthood, when we're making friends, we don't realize that we're codependent in those relationships as well. And we're codependent in those relationships as well. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And usually, when you think about codependency, you're thinking about with a romantic relationship, but it doesn't end there. Codependency can go, it's not compartmentalized. So if you are feeling codependent and you have some of those traits, you bring those traits into every one of your relationships. And the narcissist is going to tell you all kinds of things. It's going to give you promises. They're going to draw you in, and you're going to buy into it hook, line, and sinker unless you actually have that reality where you realize that this might not all be reality. They can talk a big game sometimes. They can promise a lot of things and never deliver. And that's something that really hurts, because they can get you to believe that they can do about anything. They can get you to believe that this is all going to happen, and then it doesn't. And then that's where you begin to question the reality, but you wait and wait and wait based on the potential of what could happen. You wait and wait based on the potential of what you can create or what you can do. And you think about that potential, and so you hold on, hoping and praying that this is all going to work out. And as we hope and pray that this is all going to work out, we must realize that usually we're waiting on the potential of something that's not ever going to happen. And when we're waiting on that potential, we can feel as though it's never going to happen. We're waiting for the rest of our life. But also the way that they talk, they keep baiting you to believe that this is going to happen. This will all transform into X, Y, Z. And so while you're waiting, you're giving all that admiration. You're usually probably disbanding from other people because of the words of the narcissist. And you're beginning to feel a little unfulfilled because you really don't know what's happening and you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. When I return, I'm going to be talking more about narcissism. Reggie Harvey joins me in studio today to talk about narcissism, as well as Rnold Smith. Rnold Smith, the creator of the Connection app, joins us in studio as well to talk about the connection of our relationships and how to really understand how to safeguard our relationships and how to get the most out of our relationships. Because a lot of times we take it for granted, but also we have so many responsibilities in our life that we have to put that first. And that's what the Connection app does. Stay tuned because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. You know I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about narcissism, how to identify narcissists in your life. You know, sometimes we don't even realize it when we're surrounded by narcissism in our life, and we don't realize it until we start feeling a certain way. Like we feel as though we are always doing for people and seem to not get anything in return. We feel as though we're giving other people undivided attention and not getting the same attention given back to us. We feel as though, well, we're doing everything, and it seems like in the process, we're giving to people that act as more entitled and arrogant than actually appreciative. And I know that sometimes we can help other people, we can give things back, but it's got to be reciprocal. It's got to be a cycle. You know, we give and get, and that's the way that things work. But when we're surrounded by people who are more narcissistic in nature, we have a tendency of feeling lost. We even feel as though we've lost our identity because of that codependent ability to get sucked into that narcissistic attitude, to be a part of that process and to kind of lose ourselves because we keep on giving, but we actually are losing ourselves in the process. Joining me live in studio, Reggie Harvey. Reggie Harvey just wrote the recent book, Anatomy of a Patient. You can find that on Amazon. It's a great book that's helping people be able to walk through situations and circumstances of having a health scare and a health change in your life, as well as people that are waiting for a transplant, as though Reggie is as well. Reggie is the survivor of a near-death illness, and his story is so profound that you can read about that online as well. But he's come here on the show to give his perspective because I think he comes from such a unique perspective. It's neat to hear his thought process on things like this. Reggie, great to have you in studio today.
Great to be here, Ashley. This takes me back to my original early 1980s when I moved into Dallas from Houston. I sort of had my little posse in Houston and people that I knew and traveled with and partied with, but I didn't have that in Dallas. I knew people here due to relationships that my parents had made in 1974 when they transferred down here, but I went straight to Austin and then to Houston. So Dallas was a new place for me. And I was a hard worker. I loved work. I was a workaholic. So on the weekends, I looked for all sorts of things to do. And one of the things I used to do in Houston was go to a lot of upscale piano bars and follow different musicians and that sort of thing. And I got in a habit of knowing the bartenders of those establishments. I didn't get involved into the politics of who owned what and all that social circle. I just made friends with bartenders who always protected me from over drinking, or they would weed people away from me, you know, that were leeches and things like this. And I just went out to party, not to pick people up. I went to party to listen to the music. It was always music. So in Dallas, I was trying to figure out where all the music was, and I would go to these different places and check them out. And again, introduce myself to the bartenders and start talking to them. And I think I had interesting conversation. And so they would tell me about new shows coming up or plans that they were going to make. And I would share those with people that I was meeting, and got into this habit of setting up a weekend rendezvous at various clubs around Dallas for about a dozen people. I don't know where they came from, but they just all showed up. I guess they told their friends who told their friends. And so it got to be a big deal where we were going to hang out on Friday night and Saturday night. And I loved it because I thought that I was doing something, some wonderful service, until I realized, wait a minute, even though nobody stiffed me on tickets or people paid for their own drinks or their own food or whatever, they never arranged for any activities. They always would call me. I ended up being sort of like the cruise director on a cruise ship. And I thought, this is not my role. I have a full-time job. Why am I doing this? And it takes me back. You remember a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation about people who hang on to you for you to solve all their problems, but they never do anything for you or inquire how you're doing. And that's when I used to do the New Year's Eve, drinking vodka, listening to Janet Jackson, and throwing contacts out of my day planner into the fireplace and sipping vodka after each one until I ran out of contacts to destroy. But that came later. But anyway, I had to extricate myself from this role that suddenly these Dallas contemporaries had put me in. I thought I had sort of found my tribe, but it really wasn't my tribe. I was just the pawn, and I volunteered for it. And like I said, these people didn't injure me, but they sucked up a lot of time and resources. And it took me a few years to realize I had to value my own time. So it's very easy for people to fall into that narcissistic role, even when they don't necessarily intend for it to happen, but they'll certainly accept the convenience of it and benefits of it, and leave you with all the stress and anxiety and culpability for whatever happens. Of course, I was young. I was in my early 30s, and I thought I had inexhaustible resources and energy and time. Of course, as you mature, you figure out that's not true, and you can't get your time back, and you can't get your energy back, and you have to be more judicious about where you invest those assets and spend time. I still enjoy deep intellectual conversation. I still enjoy adventures with people of quality, but I'm very careful about exposing myself to the preparation and the benefits of what we're going to accomplish when we do there. It has to be a 50-50 thing now. Everybody has to be involved, engaged, and participating. I'm not the one who's there to map out the trip, buy all the goodies, rent the car, make the reservations, all that sort of stuff. No, I don't do that anymore. When I meet people, I take time to study them, not intently, but I just pay attention to details, and I'm not so quick to decide who I'm going to partner up with. Some people are very interesting naturally, but I need to see that there's some substance there. I need to see that they have their own program. And then I need to figure out if there's really synergy between us. I'm a very independent person. I don't need a big crowd to keep me happy. I never grew up with a big crowd, and I think that's why in my early 30s, this was novel for me, and I was distracted by it. Now I'm much more careful with who I spend quality time with. In fact, having to deal with this renal failure issue and restructuring my life, I've learned how to manage my time much more effectively because I don't believe I have any of it to waste. You can, of course, find me here on the show, Live Your True Life Perspectives with Ashley Burgess. But if you want to know a little bit more about me and my background and my journey over the last 4 or 5 years, you can go to my website, reggieharvey.net, ReggieHarvey.net, and read up about my diagnosis, how I've dealt with it. You can get links to Amazon for purchasing the book Anatomy of a Patient, which I think is a very effective, transparent share of my adventure with this renal failure, living with renal failure. And you can also audit the various clips from previous shows where Ashley and I have covered several topics since February of this year. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I love Reggie's perspective. And when we've been talking about narcissism, we've been talking about how they have a tendency of wanting that undivided attention, wanting you to themselves, finding faults in others, those extremes in words, very black and white speaking, so they can put you on a pedestal or they can pull you right off that pedestal. They find fault in people, and they'll talk about that. Another thing that I want to bring up is more often than not, when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with someone who has indifference to other people's feelings. They don't care about how other people feel. Okay? Because remember, a narcissist is constantly thinking about themselves, about how they feel. And we're just kind of pawns in their reality. We're just there. And so when the narcissist is really thinking about you or I, they're only thinking about us when they want us around. Otherwise, it would be almost like in their minds, like when they stop thinking about us, like we stop moving. We become non-animated and we like wait in the closet until they come to get us. You see what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that we don't realize a lot of times. And that's why sometimes you don't even hear from the narcissist, because they usually forget even about you and they start calling you when they want something, and they won't stop because they think that you really don't have an outside life except for them. And so that's something that we really need to think about. When I return, I'm going to be giving you more information on understanding if you are around a narcissist, and better yet, some things that you can do, because as long as you have this knowledge, you have power. Rnold Smith joins us live in studio from the Connection app in just a few minutes. And don't forget, check out my website, ashleyburgess.com, Ashley, BERGES.com. And also check out the YouTube channel. New video content up every day. Just go to Ashley Burgess. Go to YouTube and search Ashley Burgess. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about narcissism, identifying the signs of a narcissist. More often than not, we might be best friends with a narcissist. We might be spending a lot of time with people that might have narcissistic tendencies. And usually what happens in that situation is we begin to feel devalued. We begin to feel like we don't really matter. And we begin to feel as though we're giving all this attention away and we're giving all this energy away, but we're not getting anything back in return. And I understand that we're not always looking for something back in return. That's not the way that it always works. But at some point, it's a give and get situation. A friendship is a two-way street. A relationship is a two-way street. And it can't be based on something that doesn't work for both people. I found that when you're in a narcissistic relationship, whether it's a friend or a coworker or even somebody that you might be dating, it seems as if you're having to give so much admiration. It seems as though those people can be almost entitled, and you can almost feel like you're losing your identity. When we think about relationships too, like right now we're talking about obviously relationships that need to be worked on. We're talking about understanding relationships that might not be as healthy as need be. But what about when we're thinking about the relationships that we're in that are healthy? What about when we think about the relationship with our spouse or our girlfriend or boyfriend? What are we doing to maximize those relationships? What are we doing to encourage joy in those relationships? What are we doing to encourage, really a connection with our spouse or our loved one? Because I think a lot of times we can be really, really busy. We can be busy on this planet, almost too busy to take care of the things that we need to take care of. It seems like work and school and the kids and everything seems to go first, but then it seems that our relationship gets put on the back burner. Okay, so joining me in studio, Rnold Smith is joining me in studio today, and he's the champion of the habits that lead to happiness and life satisfaction. He's also the creator of the new Connection app, and he's an advocate for love and joy. Rnold, great to have you in studio today. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you in studio because you and I have talked so much about creating a good relationship, lasting relationship, and what it takes. And you've created an entire app with an entire platform to make this a reality. Tell me more about how you started this and why you began it.
Sure. I guess it started, for me, both my parents died when I was quite young, and that really taught me about what was important in life. And, for me, what really leads to happiness and life satisfaction is the quality of your relationships. And what I saw in the world was so many unhappy people. And when you looked at what the source of that was, often it was because their relationships weren't as fulfilling as they could be. And oftentimes it wasn't because they didn't want that, or it wasn't even because they didn't know how. It was because what you said, because life gets so busy that we just put it on the back burner and we don't give our relationships the attention they need to thrive. And I thought that was such a tragedy. And so I really wanted to do something about that, and so we built this app. And so, if you go back to life and you look at knowing what to do really doesn't make any difference. Just because you know what to do, a lot of people know how to lose weight doesn't mean they lose the weight. A lot of people know how to make more money or save money doesn't mean they save money. Knowing makes no difference. And this drove me crazy in life because as I worked through life to try and figure out how to have the life that I wanted, I kept learning amazing strategies to create a great life, only to not have anything change. And so what I saw was that if you really want those changes to happen, you really comes down to your habits. And changing your habits is tough. And so what we did is we built a technology that really helps people transform their habits, and specifically the habits that lead to happiness and human connection so that you have the kind of relationships you want. The app's called the Connection app for couples, or the Connection app if you want to connect with the rest of the people in your life. And, if you've got that great relationship with your life partner, then everything seems to work. And that's why we started there.
Powerful stuff. I think it's interesting. One of the things when we're working on all these different things, we have jobs. Many of us work many hours. I'm probably about 60, 70 hours a week. And you're right. Things and you know what you need to do, but yet we have a tendency of not doing it. We have a tendency of not following through. So we know that we need to give attention. We know that we need to listen. We know that we need to be open to communication. And what I find so often is that we can be open to communication with our friends and people that aren't as close, but when it comes to the spouse, it seems that we can be a little more closed-minded because we're emotionally more invested. We have a tendency of not listening to them to the fullest, and that can create problems in our relationships as well.
Absolutely. And, oftentimes it's because we're so comfortable with our partner, because we know them so well and we know they're there for us, that we begin to take that for granted. And we stop doing the little things that make them feel taken care of, make them feel loved and appreciated. And that's the key. It's those little things you need to do every day. I mean, appreciating your partner isn't a sometimes thing. It isn't a special occasion thing. It's an everyday thing. And when you do that, that's when your relationship can start to thrive. But when those little bad habits creep in, that's when you start to really degrade your connection, and life, it's just not happy.
That's so true. I think that's so interesting because I think this is actually going to help us, because I think if we actually dedicated more time, and I know some of us say, well, where does the time go? I mean, we only have a finite amount of time on this planet, but it seems like if we kind of bring the importance of the relationship to the forefront, maybe we actually can explore and find solutions. As a therapist, I find that, many people jump out of the current relationship because something's not working and they see something else that they feel is greener. They think the grass is greener. And unfortunately, within a year or two, into that new relationship, we're kind of at the same situation or even worse than we were in the previous relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, because, of course, wherever you go, there you are. And your habits are your habits. And, the thing is, all the research really points to it's not about the big things. It's about the little things you do every day. And understanding what those things are, that's kind of the key. And that's, the research we did was really breaking it down into smallest common denominator so that, people really can do the actions. Because when we're so busy, if we have to think about what to do, by the time we've figured it out, the moment's passed and we've missed our opportunity. But when you've got an action right there ready to go, then when the opportunity comes, we're more likely to do it. And that's why we've broken it down into these 7 connection habits. And when you practice them in your life, you will be amazed at the difference it makes and how quickly it makes it.
Powerful stuff. Well, I look forward to having you back on the show next week. And where can we find the Connection app? I know you can go right to ashleyburgess.com and you can go to the radio page. You can click on the Connection app and it'll take you right there. But if they don't go through the website, where else can they go to find the app?
Yeah, go to Google Play or the App Store. And if you're in a relationship, download the Connection app for couples. If you want to use the Connection app for work relationships or with your aunt or your kids, then you can download the Connection app. So we've got 2 apps, the Connection app and the Connection app for couples, depending on what your situation is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, right on, Ashley. Thanks for having me on.
Looking forward to learning from Rnold in the upcoming shows. I think he's going to be a wealth of knowledge to really helping us create and co-create those relationships that we want and really use that knowledge to inspire us to really work at our relationships and not to take them for granted. As we think about the narcissist and we begin to analyze the folks that we're spending time with, the idea of the need for admiration from them is real. They have a necessary need for admiration. And a lot of times, too, they believe that they're the expert in everything. They're the authority, okay? And that becomes an issue, too, because when you're dealing with that narcissist, you're dealing with somebody who thinks that they're great at everything. They think that they hung the moon. And some things they might have, but in reality, we got to get real, because what happens is that they might devalue your knowledge or assume that they have a higher authority. And that directly relates to a lot of times, too, how a narcissist may have grandiose fantasies and beliefs that they are amazing and awesome and everything. And I believe that we should believe at the highest level for ourselves. But I think that sometimes that can get out of hand and cause problems. When I return, I'll be talking about more of identifying the narcissist in your life, how you can identify them, because this is crucial information to understanding the situation and deciding to either stick in the relationship, point things out, or to move on. If you haven't already, check out my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search Ashley Burgess. Ashley, Ashley, Burgess, Berges. You'll find new video content every week. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm exploring how to identify a narcissist, how to know if you have a narcissist in your life, how to know if your best friend may be a narcissist. Sometimes we don't know because we don't know the signs and symptoms. We're not aware of it, and it's something that we're not even looking for. And so right before the break, I was talking about how narcissists can have a tendency of having grandiose fantasies, grandiose beliefs about how great they are. And I agree that we should have a high self-esteem, but remember, there is also reality involved. A lot of times they can believe that they can do anything. They could be Superman or Superwoman. And I agree that we all have capability, but it can get out of hand as far as the way that they speak about themselves and also how they put others down. I think it's interesting, too, that a narcissist usually has tendencies of distrusting other people. They distrust others. They don't feel trustworthy with others. They feel as though others are going to hurt them. And I think that that's also a subconscious thing, because many times often the narcissist hurts other people without even acknowledging that hurt. Now, whether they know that consciously or not is to be determined. And there's a lot of talk about that. I could talk about that for 2 to 3 hours on this show, but we don't have time right now. But these are definite things that we want to talk about, because when they're distrusting of others, I think it's a subconscious thing, because I think that when we are not treating people with the utmost of respect, we really have a tendency of fearing what other people will do, because we're not doing what's right by other people. You know, I find another facet that's interesting is the manipulation. They have a tendency of wanting other people to do things that they want them to do, and so they'll manipulate those people into doing what they want. And so if you're around someone who is a narcissist, you may feel sometimes that you do things without wanting to do things. You may feel as though you're doing things against your will. You're doing things against your better judgment. And that can also come to roost as well, because that can encourage us to not feel good about ourselves. That can encourage us to feel sad or distress about ourselves. We might even feel anxiety. And that anxiety could lead us to feeling even more anxiety. And then when we're around that person, we may feel anxious, we may feel ill, and we might feel a little out of control. I also find, too, that the narcissist has a tendency of using other people. They use other people to get what they want, and that's why they manipulate as well, because they want something. They want them to do something for them. And I don't really know, and we can go into this a lot longer and a lot more in depth, you know, how much does the narcissist realize that they're manipulating other people? Because remember, narcissism is something that I believe, you know, we've talked about different facets of genetic, but also environmental, and I think it can be both. But I think also it's more environmental to some degree, because I think that when a person takes on narcissistic traits, usually it's based on historical record of the way that they were treated in the family dynamic. And so instead of wanting to feel the pain, they change there's a change in that brain chemistry. There's a change in that thought. And there could be other reasons too. We could go into that for hours and hours at end. But, you know, it's also a sense of that entitlement. And I think that we talk about entitlement a lot, especially now in the time and place that we are on this planet. But, you know, with the narcissist, it's that entitlement that others owe them something, okay? And that's always interesting, too, because when you are with a narcissist, it does seem like you're constantly giving. And when you give, it doesn't feel like it was received properly. It almost feels like you're giving, but you know how when you pay for something, like let's say like you go and take people out for dinner and you end up paying for dinner and everybody's like, oh wow, thank you so much, and that, you know, they're so grateful for it, but then, you know, the entitled response would really probably not be very much of a thank you. You would kind of feel used, and then you would kind of wonder why you did it. And so that will constantly happen when you're with the narcissist, because they are entitled. They don't feel like they have to thank you. They think that you should just do this for them because of who they are. And that leads me into the arrogance level of the narcissist. Like, they're above it. They don't have to be responsible for their actions, but everybody else does. And because of that entitlement thought process and that entitlement way of life, they're arrogant about it. They're above it. They feel that everybody owes them something. And that's something that we have to really think about as well, because, you know, I don't, you know, nobody should be entitled. And when I come across entitled people and know-it-alls, that's it's not a very good positive feeling within me. It doesn't create good lasting memories. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. And so if you're dealing with that, and you might be dealing with this on multiple scenarios, so maybe your friend is a narcissist, maybe somebody that you're at work is a narcissist, maybe someone else that you're dealing with is a narcissist, maybe your mother or father is a narcissist, and so you feel like you're kind of in situations where you don't seem super valued at all. You feel kind of, you know, just kind of there. You kind of feel like you're there to be someone's, you know, caretaker, or you're there to be their court jester, whatever that is when they're holding court. you might be having this from various angles in your life, and that might be what's causing you some stress and anxiety and strain, because it's not just coming from one person at all, it's coming from multiple people that you're interacting with, and that can become stressful if you don't know what you're dealing with. The last two things that I want to cover before the end of today's show is that you can be feeling very controlled, because when we're in an environment like this with somebody that's literally manipulating everything and behind the scenes, we can feel like we are controlled. At times, the narcissist might even appear or act like a parent, like an overly protective helicopter parent. And that can be overwhelming too, because that can cause you great strain and stress as well. Because that is not the way that we should be being handled. That is not the way that we should be dealing with life. And so those things can consequently cause us to have second thoughts, and can also cause us to wonder what's really taking place in this relationship. And last but not least is you might actually feel a loss of identity when you're around them. And that's what happens a lot of times, is that we can begin to lose our identity because of the entitlement factor, because of kind of being there at their beck and call, because of the manipulation and the control. And if we are coming from a codependent way of life and a codependent thought process, the codependent goes into a relationship and tries to be loved and wants everybody to like them, and so they'll do whatever is necessary to be liked, but they lose their identity in the process. And that's something that I want you to be super aware of, is that if you feel like you have lost your identity, I need you to step back and see, in what relationships do you feel that way? And in how have you felt like you've lost your identity? Because we need to be aware of these things, because in order for us to live a happy, healthy life, we have to live our own life. We can't be living someone else's life and just giving all to them. We have to see our value, and we have to step up to the plate and make that happen. And so I hope this show has helped you to really understand the narcissist and to be able to identify the narcissist in your life. Stay tuned. I'll be back next week, and Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.